Cleveland Clinic Mercy Hospital. Get world-class care close to you.
Doctor, doctor, I'm screaming, doctor, doctor.
All right, it is a Wednesday morning. That means time for us to go to the doctors, and we're going to visit our favorite family physician, Dr. Stan Anderson. Good morning, Dr. Stan.
Hey, Pam, great to talk to you.
You know, for a minute, I thought you were a mind reader. Because I was talking on the air earlier this week, and I said, I wonder if Dr. Stan could help us read nutrition labels. And then you wrote to me and said, hey, how about we talk about reading labels? You just happened to be listening, right?
Well, also, I had a patient, Pete Naturno, who ended up saying, you know, Pam just mentioned this. You ought to think about doing that. And I thought, you know, I think that's two different ways of looking at it. Let's do it.
All right.
So, nutrition labels. Here's the big deal. Whenever somebody is trying to make healthy choices, and you're trying to make sure that you either take enough protein or cut back on carbs, or that you're trying to make choices to say, how much processed food is this? That's where nutrition labels are really beneficial, because when you read those in the back, it will tell you how many grams of carbs, grams of fat, grams of protein it has, whether or not the fat is regular or saturated, whether or not the carbs are complex or whether they're simple. So it gives you a better idea if you're trying to be careful about certain types of foods that you're taking so that you make better choices. Many people, so many people, they get frustrated because they're trying to do the right thing. They go on, say, the keto diet or the Atkins diet, the South Beach diet, and they're trying to cut out carbs, and they see something that's advertised as low sugar, and when they read the actual label, it's got 20 grams of complex carbs. That's not low sugar. That may be low simple sugar, and that's how they can advertise it as low sugar. But the complex sugars are just as bad as far as trying to help you to not be hungry. And that's the real issue. So reading the labels when you're trying to achieve something, that has a huge benefit that way.
Yeah, I learned a lot from reading labels. And it started way back when my dad was diabetic. My mom would look at everything to see how much sugar was in foods. And ketchup was one of the things I'll never forget when she said there was so much sugar in ketchup.
Yeah.
Tons.
Yeah. And you don't think about it because normally you think, oh, it comes from tomatoes.
Yeah.
Tomatoes are a vegetable. Vegetables are good, right? Yeah. So therefore, we don't ever have to worry about ever eating a vegetable. And the answer is, you know, the potatoes, sweet potatoes, corn, the slow-cooked beans, pinto, lima, black beans, all of those things are so filled with sugar. And if you don't read the label, you easily can end up not getting any results that you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah. Read the label. You'll be very surprised. You will. It'll shock you.
Many people find out, well, that's possibly the reason why I'm not seeing success. It's because I am having some milk in my cereal. I am being not as careful in that I'm having flavored yogurt. And those things are supposed to be healthy for you, and I'm not seeing results. And the answer oftentimes is, yeah, it's because what you're doing is you're taking in something that for you is not necessarily going to be healthy.
Is there a certain number for sugar in something that we should look at?
Well, it totally depends on what type of a diet you're on. So the strict Atkins diet, so going way back, they recommend starting, in order for weight loss, on 20 grams of carbs a day, which is, that is so strict. After you've gotten closer to the weight that you want to be at, then they say, well, go ahead and open it up and go to 50 grams of carbs a day. And with that, we specifically say you really want to try to take in some of the small, dark berries. So that's one of the healthier types of fruits. The problem is we oftentimes get so stuck on, I need to have my fruits and vegetables, and so therefore my fruit is a banana and my vegetable is a potato. And the problem is, yes, they're fruits, but of the different types of nutrition that you can get, those two, bananas and potatoes, are really the least nutritious. Yes, you get potassium from bananas, but it's a big chunk of sugar, and potatoes are basically starch, which is basically long-chain sugar. It may not taste sweet, but that's because sweetness is based on the amount of simple sugars you have. Once you put those simple sugars together in a chain, then you get a starch, and starches don't have necessarily a sweetness associated with it. So people, oftentimes, they go based on what it tastes like, and if it's sweet, then it must be filled with sugar, and that's where people end up making the wrong choices. So the short answer is, it's usually not simple. It's usually so many other things that are playing a role that makes a difference. The big thing that we're all really trying to recommend people now is processed foods. Processed foods, this is where when you look at the list of the ingredients that goes into making the food that you're eating, if you see a lot of Latin words or chemical-sounding words or words that, what is monosodium glutamate? What is that? When you start looking at those kinds of things, those are preservatives. And it's the preservatives that go into the food that end up making it last longer so that there's a longer shelf life, so that the producers make more profit because it can stay on the shelves longer before it's sold. That's the real issue. So what you want to do is you really want to avoid processed foods. A simple rule of thumb, if it comes in a bag, it's probably processed. The second worst are things that come in a can. So if you really wanted to try to keep things as simple as possible, so I would normally recommend try to eat fresh. Anything you get at a market, at a farmer's market, at the dairy section, at the cold section of your local grocery store, that's usually not going to have anything processed. And second would be things that are frozen. So frozen and fresh are generally the two normally healthiest or the least amount of processed foods. And it's because processed foods are now implicated in almost every bad disease that we can get. It increases risk for cancer, heart disease, strokes. It increases risk for Alzheimer's disease, all of those bad things. So processed foods, probably the worst. Just go through your pantry and you will be overwhelmed with how many things you probably shouldn't be eating.
Yeah, I know. And look at the sodium. Look at the sodium count on some stuff. That's another thing that will shock you, how much sodium is in certain things.
We'll talk about this next week when
Yes.
we talk about hypertension and the history of high blood pressure, and sodium is the key driver. So, yeah, I look forward to that.
All right. That sounds great, Dr. Stan. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Pam.
Gotta know what's happening in my city. The latest